is most of the people who are very active or very passionate about this movement have a personal story of trauma that brought them here, right? Our cultural narrative is that vaccines are safe and effective, and my story is no different. I had a very close friend in high school who unfortunately lost her baby at 4 months of age after vaccines. No one prepares you as a parent of a vaccine-deceased child to cope with what has happened, okay? So my friend was 20 years old and blamed herself, okay? And when I meet parents in the wild, one of the first things I want to assure them of is that it's not your fault. I have never met a parent of a vaccine-injured child that did not blame themselves on some level. My friend was no different. She was young, she was unsupported, and she could not survive the loss of her child and took her life right before it would have been her child's second birthday. And I don't mean to bum you out, but it does put into perspective the uniqueness of this movement as a movement, okay? And in that moment, my life was never the same. I miss her now. I cry every May when it's her anniversary of death, every year. So many years later, right? And that is the power of humanity that propels this movement forward, right? I get offended when someone tries to take credit for the movement. The movement predates all of us. The movement began the minute vaccination began en masse. And it will continue to be here as long as we're continuing to do this as a society. But the organization I work with, Texans for Vaccine Choice, has been around for 10 years. We are the people in Texas keeping all of your rights intact, absolutely without question. We have killed 69 bills that would have taken away your medical liberty rights in the past 10 years. And we have passed 12 protective pieces of legislation. So when you're able to fire your doctor and find another one, you can do that because of us. When you can report your doctor for discriminating against you due to vaccine status, that's because of us. When you are able to exempt your child and have them enroll in public school or any licensed daycare or preschool or any institution of higher learning regardless of funding source, that's because of the work that our organization does. And I'm so proud to be a part of that. And more than our legislative arm, which helps to draft and pass those laws, we are, again, just like this medical liberty movement, we are unique. We invest in our volunteers because, again, this movement does not belong to any one person. I have my role that I play, you will all have your role that you play, and it belongs to all of us. This is a cause of humanity, and it is an innate right that we have as humans to direct what happens to our bodies. I find it astounding that I can hit someone without provocation, and guess what? That's assault, and I can get arrested. I can put myself towards someone sexually if they don't want it, but someone thinks they can inject my body with something that I don't have any legal liability for against my will, and that's public health. Sorry to laugh, but it's just so infuriating, right? All I can do is laugh and pass more laws and train more people. So the big thing about this movement and about our organization that's unique, the crown of us is our team of volunteers. Our outreach program that I have the immense honor of getting to lead really invests in you, and we teach you everything that you need to have these conversations. Anyone here ever tried to have a conversation about medical liberty that went unexpectedly sideways? Nah, I've had a few thousand, okay? It's a challenging topic. And more than I want to have the conversation, I want to have that conversation productively and with love. Because there is nothing to me more loving than being able to have a challenging conversation with someone, to give them information that they need to hear, and then to not try and impose your beliefs upon them. That's the challenge, right? So we teach you that in our organization. And we ask our volunteers for 3 to 6 hours a month, and then they go out and they change the world one local community at a time. And no other organization in the country invests in their volunteers the way that we do. And we have the incredible honor of expanding into helping other organizations in other states figure out how to activate and train their people to be effective. Not like the crazy folk in Minneapolis who are getting maced because they deserve it, but the people who are able to shift you with love in that grounded embodiment of truth, to be able to give someone a reality that's hard to hear. It's hard to hear that what you've heard about the vaccine program may not be accurate. It's hard to hear that people always have and always will be harmed by this product. And it's really hard to hear about how much those people are abandoned when they are hurt. It is the most marginalized society group I've ever found. And it's tragic. As an injured person, you basically want any other reason to be injured than a vaccine. Because once you've been labeled vaccine injured, you have a single broken government program in the VICP for the childhood vaccine schedules, or you have an even worse, even more broken payer of last resort program in the CICP for the COVID vaccine injured people, okay? And during the pandemic, I lived out what I knew was coming for 20 years. I knew this was coming. I knew 1999 that they were going to stop going for the children, they were going to come for the adults, and they were going to make it dependent upon our access in society, our vaccination choices. I knew that was coming. I did not want to be right, but I absolutely was right. And what we learned and what we lived through is what will continue to happen if we remain unwilling to have these conversations. We have to find a way. We cannot keep being polarized in this anti and pro conversation. It is a human conversation. And I will tell you fully transparent, as an outreach director for this organization, I am not attached to your individual choice. I'm not even going to ask because that's your medically private information. It's not my job to tell you what to do with your body. It's my job to inform you about the risks of these interventions, what you can do as an individual to protect yourself, and to help you make a more informed choice, and to make sure that no elected, unelected government bureaucrat can tell you what to do. Because the reality is, you own all the risk. You own all the physical risk, because it's your body. You own all the legal risk, because there's no one to sue. And you own all the financial risk, because being a vaccine-injured person or being related to one is extremely expensive and very challenging to overcome if you are able to recover that person. But back to, I don't really have a structured talk tonight. It's just kind of me rambling in a microphone, so sorry about that. When you're talking to someone, like, who here wants to be brave and share an experience where they tried to talk to someone, like whether it went good or bad? Has anybody ever tried to reach out to someone on a medical liberty topic? Or the big vaccine word in itself? Yes, brave soul.
Yeah, well, it was really just a Facebook post that was bringing awareness to during COVID, and a nurse who I worked with wrote me kind of scathing message, and then later on just unfriended me. That ended that working relationship.
Yeah, that's really common, right? People have a visceral reaction to the vaccine topic, right? Yes, share.
That day, and then my sister-in-law says, "Huh? You and your daughter ever looked into the vaccine? We agree to disagree."
Yep.
I mean, that question.
Yeah. I love that you guys are trying. One of my biggest missions in life is to help people have this conversation productively and with love. Because again, I don't want you to have this conversation at the cost of the people in your lives, your community, right? And my whole role, well, one of my many roles, one of my main roles at TSBC is to train our people how to do this well, to help them understand what's happening intellectually in someone's brain. You know, I had many years as a mental health professional helping them understand behaviorally what's happening, helping them find ways to increase receptivity and increase connection, and to be able to inform with specificity so that it's not your opinion, it's objective reality, right? Because these conversations must happen. If you want to kind of dive deep into the ideology of what's happening, you know, when someone's really in the vaccines amen crowd, Aaron Siri wrote a phenomenal book called Vaccines Amen. And when I got to meet him, I told him, oh, you have been in my brain, because reading it really resonated with me, because that is what you're up against and what I call a deeply resistant person. Because when we train, there are 3 categories of people. There's the receptive, the willing to listen, the totally naturally cooperative person who's maybe on the verge of a shift. There's the neutral, who's either hard to read or just kind of meh. Or there's the resistant, the one who's going to unfriend you and never talk to you at work again. The one who's going to stop you mid-sentence and say, agree to disagree, Polly. Right? That's a deeply resistant person. And you can reach those people too. You absolutely can. And that's my big message tonight, is if you're wondering, how do I do this? Should I do this? Can I do this? Yes, you absolutely can. Yes, you absolutely should. Outreach is a skill like every other skill you've ever acquired in your entire life. And learning how to prepare yourself to do that task, to connect well with your partner, to be able to steady their interaction, right? Because that's what connection does. When you're having a hard conversation, you're relying on your connection with your partner to steady that conversation. And when your partner begins to get triggered or they begin to get too much, you can move back into safety of connection. And then after you've connected thoroughly, you can inform with specificity. Don't tell them, my opinion is, I think you should. Those are no's. Stick to something that is objective reality, easily verifiable, and not nuanced. If you need to take 20 minutes to explain it to me, and the weeds lead to confrontation, all right? So, inform with specificity, and then the last thing that you always want to do is allow. And when I train advocates, the 2 places they are really, really struggling is preparing and allowing. They're not honoring that this is a real thing, a real high-stakes thing that you're doing when you're engaging in. And it deserves preparation. It deserves you training yourself in how to do it and how to be grounded enough to be the love you need to be. Because you can't fake it. You have to find a way to get and stay in the love of it, in the harmony of it, in the cooperative nature of it. And then you have to allow, which means you may not see a shift on the surface. You may want them to tell you, oh yes, Carrie, you're a genius. Where have you been all my life? Thank you for saving everything for me. You're probably never going to hear that. I've never heard that, but it would be nice, right? You're going to allow what you told them. You're going to allow them to have breathing room to absorb what you've told them. Because make no mistake, if you're talking to someone who's deeply resistant, you've just blown their mind and their worldview to smithereens, all right? They don't know that the only person who owns the liability is a vaccine recipient. They don't know that. They don't know that actual federal laws have been passed and amended twice to make them even worse, to restrict your ability as a vaccine recipient to be made aware of the risk. Like, think about that. Think about how when you go and get a pharmaceutical drug with a pharmacist, if that's your thing, if it's not, that's fine. But if you go to the pharmacy, they give you a whole little packet and they have a whole conversation, that's called informed consent. Vaccines have no legal requirement for informed consent. The only legal requirement since 2016 is to have a website address in the appointment notes. That's it. I don't know how your doctor does it, but my doctor gives me the appointment notes at the end of the appointment, after I've done all the things as a summary, okay? So think about that from a consumer standpoint. Think about the risk for a consumer, right? That consumer isn't aware that they own all the liability, legal, financial, physical. They aren't aware of any of the risks, right? That's what they're told, and that's what they believe. It's not their fault that they don't know. They haven't met you yet, right? They haven't had someone reach out and love and talk to them yet. They don't know that vaccines aren't pharmaceuticals, they're biologics, and they have an entirely different set of safety standards and approval metrics. They don't know that the vaccines for the dogs and the cows and the chickens have stronger safety profiles and stricter approval metrics than the ones recommended for the kids. They don't know that, but they need to know, don't they, right? They don't know how to take in what's happening with the schedule changes. There is a lot of that I cannot believe are happening in my lifetime that I have prayed for on the regular, God knows how long, God does know how long, a very long time, right? But so many people don't understand And all they feel is threatened. Because again, vaccines, amen, is a worldview. I meet people all the time who say things to me like, what vaccine should I get to protect my daughters when I get their ears pierced? I don't know what to say to that because there's so much to unpack in that question. But there's sincerity there, right? But that tells me that they don't know anything about these products that they put so much faith in. You stepped on a nail, you're not going to get tetanus. I don't know what to tell you. Please look it up on Google, right? But they don't know. Those people don't know. I mean, doctors who don't know about the liability issue. I've been told by physicians, oh, well, if you're so scared, man, if something goes wrong, you can sue and retire early. Really? You haven't been able to sue since 1986. That was a long time ago, friends. We're in a whole different millennium. But they don't know. And they won't know if you don't find the courage to talk to them. And that's the thing. I'm here to help people make this a conversation again, where it always should have been a loving, informative, productive conversation, so that you can really help move the needle with every person in your life. And while we're doing that, we can get together at the Capitol and we can do those same connection skills with the legislators and pass the laws, because all community outreach leads to the laws, because the laws make everything easier or harder for us on the ground. But even if we have all the laws we could ever want, we have to have average people understand why those laws matter to them. I help people who are hardcore vaccinators understand and agree that they want those laws. Because even if you always choose to say yes, because again, I work for Texans for vaccine choice, just because my choice is absolutely not, doesn't mean that someone else doesn't have the legal right to decide differently. And it's so powerful as an advocate to recognize that your job isn't to get them to decide that vaccines are poison, even though that may be your opinion. It may even be my opinion, right? Your job is to get them to understand why they want to keep their right to decide what happens to their body. And I pose to people all the time, what happens when you don't get to decide who gets injected to you? How are you free if you've lost your body? What happens when they don't even have to tell you what they're injecting you with? What happens when there's no recourse and no diagnosis code and no help, right? How will you know that you won't be injured? There's no test for it. How will you know that you'll recover? There's no guarantee of that, right? People don't understand. And that's an important thing I want you to hear too, because there's a lot of division on this topic. There's a lot of fuel division on both sides, okay? People on my side sometimes can't allow someone to be in a different place on the spectrum. But if you hang around me long enough, you'll end up in my camp, or very close to it. But not everyone is going to be in my position. Not everyone is going to be as steadfast as I am. And that's not my job to judge you for that. It's not my job to tell you what you should think and feel and do. It's my job to educate you accurately and with love, respect, and humanity. Because then, even if they decide not to change their behavior, I have changed their opinion of everyone like me. All right? And that is a powerful step by itself. And most importantly, I leave every single person I talk with their own individual buy-in into why these laws and this movement has a place in their life. Because even if you always want to say yes, you want to maintain the right to say no, just in case. Just in case they come up with COVID Part 2 and even worse, right? In case they decide to do Operation Warp Speed, whatever that would be, right? It's amazing to me that you can hear an Operation Warp Speed and think, yes, sign me up. Healthcare should move at the speed of light. But coming together is the solution. Through all of this division and all of the strife that we're experiencing, The only thing I have ever found powerful enough to pierce the veil of cognitive dissonance is love and my willingness to meet you in cooperation and care. Because I do care about you, or I wouldn't be bothering to even reach out to you in the first place. If I didn't care, I would make zero effort at all. I would let you quietly make your decisions and quietly wonder why your health was being stolen moment by moment, and quietly wonder why your children weren't as healthy as they could be or should be, right? And outreach is an act of love and care. And every step of it is covered in love and care. You care about them enough to be specific in what you share. You care about them enough to allow them space to integrate the new. You care about them enough to keep yourself regulated and not acting like a crazy person, right? I'm tempted. I get tempted. I get invited to fight a lot, and it is all of my experience that allows me to say, I'm just going to pass on that fight, and I'm going to love you anyway, right here, right? But that takes time and training and skills. So if you're interested in learning how to become a better communicator and connector, which is what an outreach coordinator is, by the way, it's a trained communicator and connector, all of our training in Texas is free. We don't charge our volunteers anything. If you don't live in Texas, or you aren't willing to help belligerent, and you just want to learn to be a better communicator and connector without having to do anything with it, you can come to our trainings as a paid guest if you want to do that. But mainly, I want you to understand the power that you have to change the world. There's so much in the world telling you that you aren't enough, that you aren't enough at all. And that is the biggest lie I have ever heard in my entire life. You are plenty, and you are all you will ever need to shift anyone on anything. We just have to remember our own power and our own ability to reach out with love and that high, high frequency that breaks down walls, breaks down barriers, brings people together in a way that you could have never imagined. When I went on to this radical outreach idea years ago, it was some crazy idea. I was such a weirdo before I found TFBC. It didn't make sense in my life until I found TFBC. Because I was just an advocate on my own, right? Casually dating other volunteer groups, but never really committing like I did here. But I was being prepared to do this, to take all of my skills, all of my awareness, to help people become more through this process. To be able to connect deeper on whatever topic they choose, including this one. So I have a table back there in case you want to learn specifics. I didn't talk a whole lot about vaccines today, but it really wasn't about vaccines. It was about your power and your ability to affect deep change. And you can and should dabble in that because it will change your life for the better. It's certainly enriched mine in ways that I cannot even articulate. But if you want to learn specifics about individual vaccines or the laws we have in Texas, or if you want some fun stickers or some cute pens, there is a table back there. I have some fun bumper magnets that say, come and make me, that really embody that spirit. But again, you are enough. That's the biggest message. You are enough, you are powerful, and you are changing every single person who comes into your life. And you get to decide how you choose to change them. What change you propose for them. And you get to decide how you present it, and you get to decide how you move with that activity. So, thank you very much for your time tonight. I really enjoyed the food. If anybody wants to talk to me later or have questions, I love people, so feel free to say hi. Thank you so much.